live from the snow in the White House is White House Deputy Press Secretary and his special assistant to the President of the United States, Hogan Gidley. Hogan, nice to have you.
Great to be with you today. It seems to be that government's quite slow today because of the snow, so that's a good thing.
Now, are you the only person in Washington working, Hogan, or what?
Oh, no. The White House is always working. I'm actually, I'm not in yet. I'm about to walk in here in just a minute in the snow. We had one of those full days of stoppage, but we never stop at the White House. As you know, this president just continues to go regardless of weather conditions or time of day or night, and so we've got to try to keep up with him at least a little bit. So got to walk in here in a minute and get the day going.
Well, stay safe and don't slip on the ice, and be careful driving in that treacherous weather. I've stayed in Richmond today, so I'm not going up there. So good luck with that. And hey, whatever you do, don't call a press conference at 2:35 for 3 o'clock. Nobody will show up except the people that hang there. So don't do that. That would be I would say, Hogan, that would be a diabolical move if you guys did that. Press conference, 3 o'clock, and you put it out in the snow at 2:45. That would be a diabolical move.
Oh, of course. And the president, we were talking the other day because there were some press people lined up outside in the cold, and they were saying, how long are we going to stand here? I thought the thing started at 2 or whatever time it was. I said, we're going the cable company route. It's sometime between 1 and 6. So you guys have a good time out here. And they were all just teeth chattering, freezing. But, no love lost there. They can sit outside as long as they have to. So. Yeah.
Well, you know what? I didn't go to that one just for that reason, figuring that I'd be sitting out there for an hour or so, and then I'd have to deal with some of my colleagues, Jim Acosta and the others. But the president calls on me. He calls on Acosta. He calls on Brian from Playboy magazine. I mean, he calls on them, right? So you got to give him that, right? I mean, so that's
he's the most successful president in history, and the people in the press corps will tell you that. Number one, and number two, this notion that he's afraid to take questions is absolutely ludicrous. Yes, he does it from all types, from all political persuasions, and you see that with people like Jim Acosta. And one of the most poignant moments when he made that historic declaration of a national emergency from the Rose Garden and talked about the additional billions of dollars that we could use immediately, was that Jim Acosta took that time to try and accuse the president of manufacturing a crisis. And the brilliance of Donald Trump, he turned to the angel moms in the crowd who have children who have been killed, murdered, run over, died in various ways. And he looked at them and said, Jim, why don't you ask these angel parents if they think it's manufactured? Their kids should be alive today. These crimes are senseless, they're needless, and they're 100% preventable. So don't tell me it's a manufactured crisis. Look into their eyes and tell them it's a manufactured crisis. And, of course, they stood up and showed the heart-wrenching pictures of their children, and he had nothing to do but to sit down. Because everyone who knows this at the local level, who experiences the pains and ills and woes of illegal immigration, understands this is a serious issue. Barack Obama called it a humanitarian crisis back in 2014.
Right.
So it's nothing new. They just don't want to hear about it, and they don't think it's real because it doesn't affect them in their ivory towers, in their news centers that's surrounded by armed guards and walls.
And high security. And Hogan, after that, when Costa was doing his press briefing from his White House station, the little CNN hood area there on the lawn, he said he talked about the angel moms, and he said their children alleged victims of alleged undocumented immigrants. I mean, he wouldn't even give the mothers the respect of the facts. He said alleged, like somebody was making this up, like their children died and somebody made up how they were attacked. I mean, the whole thing is disgusting, man. And but look, the president.
But how many times does the press jump on a story that we see recently and won't use the phrase alleged when it fits their narrative and their desire to paint someone with a broad brush, a negative broad brush? But then, in the case of an angel mom where their child was killed by someone who wasn't here legally, and the case has already been adjudicated, the person may or may not be in jail, but their kid is gone forever, that's alleged. he'll put on his journalism hat to say that's alleged, but then so many will throw that hat off and stomp on it and push a narrative that they want to have happen, whether the facts are all in or not. And that's what's so egregious about the profession right now. And I used to be a journalist, so it pains me to have these conversations, but they do exist.
Who are you with, Hogan?
I was at a local station in Little Rock, and then also in Jonesboro, Arkansas, as an anchor and reporter. And I'll tell you, my professor at the University of Mississippi was a atheist liberal to the highest degree, but was a journalist in Memphis. And he would absolutely fail you in a heartbeat if you put one editorialized word in a package or a story. He would strike it and say, "This is it. You can't do that. You failed this exam. You failed this particular test." And now these editorialized words are rampant throughout journalism, and I don't want to get on a high horse about journalism here, but that's the problem. It's not your job to analyze. And I got into a fight with a reporter the other day in my office who said, I was trying to offer my analysis, and I said, no one cares about your analysis. You're the reporter. You guys have a panel of 9 goons sitting in a studio somewhere in Ivory Tower, New York, who are paid to analyze. Toss it back to them. You're not supposed to analyze. Don't offer your opinion. Tell us the story. Tell us exactly what the president said, and then turn it back to them for their opinion.
Well, now that I know that you went to Ole Miss, now I know why we get along so good. My son went there also, and he's a college professor at the University of Nevada, but now he's gone back to Ole Miss. He starts there teaching again in July 10th.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so he's going back to Ole Miss. That's where my son.
Tell him I said hotty toddy when you see him.
I will do that, and so he's pretty excited to go back. He said he had all of Nevada and Reno that he could possibly stand, so he's going back to God's country, and he teaches English literature there starting in the summer, and then he'll go forward in the fall. So he's excited about it. Hogan, the 16 states that brought the lawsuit against the president 2 days ago, led by Attorney General Becerra in California, also including states that have nothing to do with the border, no concerns there, states like Wisconsin and Virginia. What's the deal with this?
Well, look, this is something the president predicted, and I think that's obvious that we knew this was going to happen. But what the president did that was so smart was the $3.6 billion from the national emergency piece. Quite frankly, is only part and parcel to the rest of the money. The $600 million from the Treasury fund, the 1.37 we got from the actual bill, and then the remaining DoD money can be repurposed immediately. So I'll use a southern colloquialism here, but we got the biscuits. They're just arguing over the gravy. We can go ahead and get started immediately, and they can enjoin all they want to for that national emergency piece, and they will. The president predicted it. But the beauty of what the president did was he freed up that $3.1 or so million immediately in some of the repurposed funding that we can go ahead and use and start building today. And that's what makes it so strong. So the sexy part of it, the newsy part of it is they'll show all these attorneys general fighting the president and going against the ability to protect the American people. But the president said, fine, do that. While you're busy arguing over that money, I already have the ability to take this other money and repurpose it for the needs of the American people, and that's what he's going to do.
So he's got $1.375 billion that he got in the deal that he had to sign. The provisions, as I understand it, that many of us didn't like, those potentially expire in 9 months. So it's not like that they're permanent law, right? Those can go away.
Right.
Okay.
September.
Right. So I'm not even going to get into that now because he's already signed that it's done, but those can go away. So he's got that $600 million, you said, from the Treasury fund that he can access immediately, which gets him to, rounded off, $2 billion. And then
$2.5 billion from the DoD counter narcotics repurposing also. So he's close to about $5 billion he can use immediately.
So he's got $5 billion immediately. So really what we're arguing over with this lawsuit is the additional $3.1 billion. But meantime, Hogan, I just want to get this clear for our audience. The president, his administration with his Army Corps of Engineers, they can start construction on the barrier now, right? Because they have $5 billion accessible now that a stay by some judge in San Francisco can't stop that, right?
Yes, as I understand it, that's correct. He has already begun building wall. I mean, so many of the reporters said that was wrong. Then he flew down there and made them look at it, which is also kind of an in-your-face, brilliant move by the president. But yes, we can go ahead and start building that now. It's a need that this country has now and has it immediately, and the president has the ability to repurpose that funding to do that. And that money is just sitting there. But also in the DOD fund, for example, it's my understanding that these are counter-narcotics funds kind of purposed within the DOD for that particular issue. So because we have so much drugs pouring across this country now, and the argument that liberals make, which is so ridiculous, that most of the drugs come in through ports of entry. Well, ports of entry drugs, for the most part, get seized at ports of entry because we have fairly good security measures. Now, in this proposal, we've bolstered those. So now we have the ability to check 100% of the cars and trucks coming into this country. So even more so, we're going to have the ability to stop drugs at the ports of entry. But to pretend as though the thousands of miles in between ports of entry are just off limits to drug dealers, that they know that the best way to do it is go through a port of entry where they may potentially get caught, is ridiculous. Of course they go through in the dead of night through places where no one is. Now MSNBC and CNN are even showing video of truckloads of people being stopped at that little tiny fence and hopping right over it. So it occurs on a daily basis. We have to stop that. At the very least, the fences will funnel people into those ports of entry and make it much more difficult to get into this country illegally.
Makes too much sense, too much logic there. Let's get to McCabe and his interview on 60 Minutes. I had Congressman from Southwest Virginia, Morgan Griffith, Republican, on today. He called for a special prosecutor to investigate McCabe, Rosenstein, Comey, the whole bunch of them, because of this wire, the potential being wired, meeting with the president, entrapping him, and then going to the cabinet. Is that something the administration can see happening? And just what did you make of this whole McCabe interview and what he was attempting to do?
Look, Mr. McCabe was fired in total disgrace from the FBI because he lied to investigators on multiple occasions, including under oath, I might add. He had it's now been exposed that he had a destructive agenda that basically drove him in an irresponsible fashion to open a completely baseless investigation into the president. In fact, what he did was so shameful, he was, in fact, referred to federal prosecutors. So he has no credibility. He's an embarrassment to the men and women of the FBI and our great country. And this is exactly what the president was talking about when he said, the rank and file members of the FBI put their lives on the line every day for this country. But some of the people at the top, at the highest levels, were completely exposed for their bias against Donald Trump and for Hillary Clinton. And that's where we sit today.
Do you think a special prosecutor will be named and an investigation started by Attorney General Barr?
Oh, I do not know. I do not know that. I mean, look, Attorney General Barr, obviously, just getting the votes needed. We're excited about that, sworn in. He's going to be an incredible Attorney General. The president's really excited about having him over at the DOJ. But I definitely wouldn't try to speak for the Attorney General.
All right, final question, and I know you have to take off. Hogan Gidley with us, Deputy Press Secretary, President Trump, White House, also Special Assistant to the President. 2 days ago, the President making a speech in Miami concerning Venezuela. Now we're finding out that humanitarian aid is being stopped by Maduro because he's controlling the food supply and he's the one handing out the food boxes in Caracas in order to keep people loyal to him because they're getting food. He's afraid that if the humanitarian food comes in, he's done. What is the administration doing in order to get that humanitarian food in that would basically be the end of the Maduro regime?
Well, look, it's very clear. It's kind of a historic moment. I didn't go with the president on that trip down to Miami, but Sarah Sanders went. She was calling me saying she'd never seen a crowd that excited, that raucous, because they knew what was at stake. I think one major takeaway here is that socialism doesn't work. And so for all the Democrats who are hanging their hat on that very topic for this election cycle are making a grave error. But you see it playing out in real time now that doesn't work. And look, we are pushing for a peaceful transition of power. The newly and recognized President Guaido is someone now recognized by 50 plus countries around the world, and the Maduro regime, which is on its way out. We think that these types of displays by the United States and other countries will help move that forward. The president has said he's not going to take anything off the table. He even said that in the speech, that while he wants a transition of power that is calm and peaceful, that he's not taking anything off the table, and he wants that humanitarian aid to get to the people. And we've even seen some breaks now in the military force of Maduro that has begun to break and move to the Guaido regime. So, we're hoping for a peaceful transition of power. The people want it, and hopefully we can be there to assist them in any way possible.
Hogan, I want to thank you for being with us. Hogan Gidley, Deputy Press Secretary to President Trump, and also Senior Advisor to the President's Special Assistant. Hogan, thanks for being with us today. Stay safe, okay?
Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Howdy toddy.